If I would tell you that ILIU Maniu, one of the former prime ministers of Romania, and in fact one of the main architects of the reunion of Transylvania region, that beautiful jewel region of Romania, he helped reunite that region with Romania, and not only that, he's even the founder of the National Peasant Party. If I would tell you that ILIU Maniu, that guy, has died here in Sighetu, not comfortably as a hero in his home with his family, but as a traitor in a prison, a communist prison here in the city of Sighetu, would you believe that this peaceful city has such history and turbulent events? I didn't believe when I heard that. And in case you are confused, this is not his statue. This is the statue of Taras Shevchenko, a famous Ukrainian poet. I made many videos about him when I was in Ukraine. Today I suggest you follow me to explore the history of this beautiful city called Sighetu. In fact, less than 1 kilometer away from the Ukrainian borders, and we'll start with the medieval history of this city, and then I'll take you with me to the communist prison where a lot of people has died. In fact, a lot of politicians, usually over the age of 60, they found their death right here, this street that you see, where the communist prison used to exist. If you are excited to learn a bit more about this medieval ex-communist city, follow me.
As long as you let him go, it wasn't your fault. You didn't know. Pathological lies I rarely found out. You're one of the lucky ones, though you can't see it now.
Sighetu Marmației. It means literally island on Maramures, Maramures being the name of this region, and this actually the original name in the Hungarian language. It was founded actually in the years 900, so we're talking about the 10th century, when this city was not part of Romania but part of the Kingdom of Hungary. But of course the first settlements date back to the 12th and 8th century. We are talking about the Hallstatt period, so this is more than 3,000 years ago. One of the advantages of the city of Sighetu and its location, it was always neighboring greater powers. In the west, the Kingdom of Hungary, and in the north, you recognize it, it's the Kievan Rus. So this is the Orthodox Church of Ukraine, because north of Sighetu was the Kievan Rus, the first true Slavic state led by Volodymyr the Great. I made many videos about it when I was living in Ukraine. In the years 1300, the 14th century, the city of Sighetu became a royal-free city. You remember I made a video about the city of Zagreb, Croatia, that was also a royal-free city, part of the Hungarian kingdom. This was very smart from the Hungarian kingdom, because they gave a certain autonomy to the cities, and at the same time they will have to pay a certain amount of tax in exchange of military protections and other privileges. So the city of Sighetu was also in the same situation as Zagreb, Croatia. You could check my previous video from Zagreb, Croatia, right here. I told you this city has always been between big powers, between the Hungarians in the west, the Ukrainians in the north. Now there is the Ottoman Empire. That's why in the 16th century this city of Sighetu became an independent municipality within the Ottoman Empire. Just look at the architectural heritage that this city has. It's mind-blowing. 2 centuries later, the Kingdom of Hungary got this city back. We're talking about the 1700, and it remained within the Hungarian borders until 1918 with the famous Treaty of Trianon, which happens exactly in 1920. If you have been to Paris, Chateau de Versailles, there is a part of the castle which is called Trianon. That's where the treaty was signed, and that treaty actually took almost 70% of the Hungarian borders and kind of gave them to other countries. Romania got the region of Transylvania, one of the jewels of the country of Romania. In fact, it's celebrated every year in December, on December 1st. It's called the Unity Day, if I'm not mistaken. That's when some regions reunited with the Kingdom of Romania, such as Transylvania and also the region of Maramures and this city of Sighetu. Since that time, after the end of the the First World War, this city has been Romanian, with the little exception of the Second World War, with the what they call the Second Vienna Award, Vienna Diktat in the German language. That's when the Nazi and the fascists of Mussolini forced Romania to cede again part of its territories to Hungary, but it lasted only during the Second World War. Romania got it back in the 1947, if I'm not mistaken. And since the Second World War, the city of Sighetu has been living happily within the Romanian borders, and no problem since then. Would you believe that? Of course no, because the picture in front of me tells a different story. The memorial to the victims of communism and to the resistance. Yes, there is a dark history of Romania that happened few meters away from here, and that's where we are going right now, and that's what we are going to check out. So if you are excited, follow me.
No, I'm not running back to you now. Said I was all in, you let me down, but now the world is rising, and all I think about is how far we've gone in to give it up now.
I'm in the prison of Sighetu, which is today a memorial for the victims of communism, and I want to show you how mad the madness of the communist regime was at the time. Look at all the pictures of the people here covering all the walls. These are the victims of the prison and communism. The second thing I want you to look at is this map. Look at all the Christian crosses. This is the map of Romania, and as you could notice, it's a bit concentrated around the area of Constanta. The Black Sea is there, and they represent either prisons or psychiatric hospitals or mass graves. More than 15 mass graves were discovered at the end of the communist regime in 1989. More than 15, that's massive. In this room they showcase some of the belongings of the prisoners, starting from this map of Romania. Actually, you see a bag there, some gloves, this looks like a cup, maybe they used for the shower, a shirt, and actually here we have the uniform of one of the prisoners. You could see how uncomfortable it was. Welcome to the Gulag of Romania. And these are the different detention centers. So you see Oradea, for example. This is the one where we are now, Sighetu. I continued my way exploring this prison of Sighetu. That is today a communist memorial for the victims, and I guess this is actually the prison itself. So if you are ready for some heavy charged history, let's step in. ILIU Maniu, the cell where ILIU Maniu died. In case you don't know who ILIU Maniu is, he is one of the former Prime Minister of Romania. He knew it, or he was born in 1870 something, so during the Austro-Hungarian Empire, so he knew the Romanian kingdoms, the First, Second World War. He is also one of the architects of the reunion of the region of Transylvania to Romania. So that's not any person. He had close ties to King Carol. In fact, he helped deposing the son of King Carol, Mikhail, if I'm not mistaken, to bring King Carol back. So this is not any person in Romania, and he was imprisoned here with a quick show trial, saying that because he's also the founder of the PNT, which is the National Peasant Party here in Romania, who was kind of advocating for, you know, like basic human rights, such as any citizen of Romania has the right to get a passport, leave the country, comes back to the country whenever he or she wants. For this kind of things, he was imprisoned. Of course, they considered him a traitor, you know, like a show trial. Everything is allowed and possible. And this is where Mr. ILIU Maniu has died. So let's step in to his cell. (1873) to be exact, to 1953. This is where he spent his last days, and in case you are wondering how long he was imprisoned, 6 years, and it could have lasted longer, but that's how much his body could sustain. He was 80 years old. That's quite old. Only 5 years after the Second World War, the communists of Romania got their dream true. They dismantled a multi-party state. They had the National Peasant Party, the National Liberal Party, and the Social Democrat Party. He dismantled them, and they came back to, or they went to a classical authoritarian regime with a state, one-party state, such as the case of China, for example, today. This, what you see here, is all the madness that the communists had to go through, including a lot of show trials that didn't have any solid foundation, so that they can take the main heads of the opposition, such as ILIU Maniu, who, as I just showed you, was one of the main statesmen of Romania for the 19th and 20th century. These are prominent Romanian statesmen. You look at Mihai Popovici, if you would see his picture as a statesman, you wouldn't say this is the same man standing here. But this is how he became after suffering the prison of Sighetu. Most of them actually died because these statesmen, they were quite old. ILIU Maniu, for example, when he came here, I mean, he died at 8 years. That's quite old, and even a young man wouldn't sustain what was happening here in like the atrocities that they had to endure in this prison. So a lot of them died actually in the prison. And in fact, the main reason why they were sentenced here is treason. Treason because the communists said that these Romanian statesmen had close ties to the British and American intelligence, so these are traitors and their heads need to be cut. Of course, supported by the the Soviet regime of Russia, who exerted a strong influence on Romania for at least 2 decades, from 1945, the end of the Second World War, up to 1965, when Ceausescu came to power, and he lasted for another 25 years until 1989, almost 1990, where he was, deposed, if I may say. But yeah, it's crazy to think that some people were living here, imprisoned for years actually. Look at the door. That's... see. Now we go to another chapter of the Romanian history, and that actually caused a heated debate among Romanian people. Monarchy versus communism would have been a better choice for Romania to remain a kingdom or republic as it is today. And here you see King Mikhail. He is the last ruling king over the country of Romania. Here is his picture when he came back in the late 1980, early 1990. The post-communist regime at the time, when he saw him coming back 30 years ago, did not like it, so they did not authorize him to come back to the country. And true story, at the end of the Second World War, when he was forced to abdicate, they ripped him off his passports and they seized a lot of his properties. and he was of course exiled, so kicked out of the country, and later on he settled down, I think, in Switzerland with his wife. But yeah, at the collapse of the communist regime, he came back. I think did he entertain the option of becoming king again? I'm not sure, but yeah, it just didn't work out. Another fun fact, he is actually the cousin of the Queen of the United Kingdom, Queen Elizabeth II. Here is a citation of the Legion of Merit from the White House in Washington. His Majesty King Mihai I of Romania rendered exceptionally meritorious conduct in the performance of outstanding service to the cause of the Allied nations, because, as you know, Romania started the Second World War, forced to support the Nazi, and at the end, in fact, he orchestrated this, King Mihai I, the swing of Romania from supporting the Axis to the Allied, so officially it was recognized as a country that supports the Allied force, so the United Kingdom and the United States. But yeah, this is a topic of controversy. Do you think that Romania would have been a better country if it would have remained a full kingdom? I do not have the answer to that. Sorry. And then you have the forced labor of the communists. Why would they even need some forced labor? Well, like the Nazi, I'll step out, it's gonna be quieter. Like the Nazi of Germany, the communists had also big projects, and to do that they needed a lot of people, and they forced people to go work there, but not any people, because if you look at the word of Giorgio Dej, who is the first head of the communist regime after the Second World War, who led Romania for 20 years from 1945 until 1965, in his own word he called the Black Sea Canal, the one that was built right here, from the Danube River to Constanța, he called it the graveyard of the Romanian bourgeoisie. In fact, a lot of kind of aristocratic Romanians, they were forced to work there. A lot of them died. Little fewer among them have survived. And then there is this, a motorbike. Why would they need this actually? Well, because the forced labor's camps, they were so huge, so they needed to move from a point to another one. So that bike is one of them actually that was used into the forced labor. As you can see, it's getting busier, and there are still 2 other floors to explore. Just tells you the madness of this prison. We spoke a lot about men, but what was the role of women at the time, and were they even imprisoned? Of course they were, because the room where we are going is called Women in Prison, and I'm gonna tell you the story of Ioana. Ioana is a Romanian girl who was born to a Romanian mother and a Romanian father. Her picture is actually here. See the girl here, Ioana Voicu Arnautoiu. Her father was executed in 1959 in a prison, and her mother died in 1962, since she was sentenced to life and really harsh labor in a prison. Now guess what happens to the girl? They took her from her mother after her birth, and they gave her to an orphanage, so the girl never knew her parents. And the reality is, she discovered who her real parents are only in 1990, and that's crazy. This is only the story of one family, but there are more than 4,200 women that were somehow imprisoned or forced to labor, simply because they were mothers, wives, or daughters of what the communist regime considered a threat to the social order, those political prisoners. We also see their belongings, like you see here. And this one is probably the doll of one of the daughters, because a lot of women who gave birth in prison, they would take their daughters from them and give them to orphanages, and they would never give them any news about it, and often the mothers would die soon after. So yeah, that's quite charged of history, I would say. And if you did something really bad, this is what's waiting for you. The black cell. You know what it means? Some chains, and actually there is an LED spot installed, but otherwise this is a black cell to take the psychological torture to a higher level. But if you really want to get your dictatorship successful and complete, you gotta infiltrate the educational system. So this is the communization of the education of Romania, and any teacher who wanted to stand a chance of becoming or continuing his role as a teacher had to become an actor of propaganda and, you know, spread the idealist future that probably never happened, certainly never happened, of that, you know, that Soviet communist successful man and woman, etc., etc. You could see a lot of testimony. And speaking of the president of Romania, I had a conversation with a young Romanian man, and he told me one of the problems of the Romanian education system is that somehow, even though the communism collapsed 30 years ago, the education system still suffers from the heritage of the communists. That actually the communists, like, you know, they put tears and blood and sweat to kind of, you know, make it a communist regime following the Soviet ideals and ways of teaching, and apparently it's not dead yet. And according to a lot of Romanians, this is one of the problems of the educational system, is the communist heritage, which somehow I don't know whether I should agree or disagree with it, because at the same time Romania has invented a lot of things and has done a lot of things even during the communist era in terms of science, medicine, etc. So yeah, would it be that easy to say all the problems of the educational system of Romania are due to the communist heritage? I don't know what to think about that. It's getting actually a bit busy. How about we step out of the prison, get some fresh air?
Okay to heal. Take the time that you need. Yeah, I know that you're stronger than what you believe. This is the last time he'll leave you this hurt.
And then, of course, you recognize it. It's the cortege of sacrificial victims. It's actually become one of the symbols of this prison in Sighetu to commemorate the suffering of everyone who got imprisoned here. And here, I'm gonna take you to something really intriguing. Before I take you to that special room, I wanna take you through this labyrinth. And on the wall here, actually all over the walls, it's inscribed the names of the victims who died in the prisons, whether here in Sighetu or all over communist Romania. And I can tell you that the list is really long. Wow, look at the door. God, I've never seen anything like this. This is massive. Seriously, this is? So this is a religious memorial. There is actually the Christian cross up there that brings the light straight here with the candles around. Of course, you can buy some candles here, leave some coins. So this is a religious monument that was built after. So what do I think about the communist memorial we just saw? I mean, the memorial of the communist victims. on one hand, it's like, you know, those crimes can't be just ignored. Like, they killed a lot of people disappeared just because they expressed an opinion. That's kind of just hard to comprehend, to be honest, that they were doing this like within their same country. And La Securitate, like the Gestapo of Romania, it took the authoritarian I would say regime to another level of madness, because nobody could trust anyone. Like, while the Soviet Union was kind of de-Stalinizing the country, well, the Romanian one was doing opposite, especially with La Securitate. So that's on one hand. On another hand, when you are living in an ex-communist country like me today, living in Romania, and you meet Romanian peoples, and you meet a young 20 years old girl who is busting her ass off as a waitress, earning less, or let's say $1,000 per month, because keep in mind the minimum salary of Romania is about $600 per month. And when you speak to that girl who is 20 years old, who doesn't know anything about the communism, and she tells you, oh, I wish we were living in the Ceausescu area. Ceausescu was the communist leader from 1965 to 1989. You say, wow, why are you saying this? Oh, because at least at the time I wouldn't have to worry about my job or anything like that. Once I finished school, I had a job during the communist era. I would have had a job during the communist era. And then I answer her saying, yeah, but you wouldn't have any type of freedom. You wouldn't be able to travel and things like that. Like now, Romanian citizens are free to travel. They can go to a lot of countries. And then the girl answers you, say, yeah, it's good to have a Romanian passport that allows me to travel, but it's bad that I don't have the money to afford traveling. I wish that at least I could be in a situation where I can't travel. That's okay, but at least I can live well and in a decent way within my own country, which is not her case today. So it surprises me to really see people and talk with people who tells you kind of they wish the country was still communist or things like that, because at least at the time they say, oh, Ceausescu has big projects and things like that. They say today our politicians are bad, nothing was built since the communist regime collapsed. Most of the things that Romania has are either from the medieval era or from the communist era. So yeah, I don't know exactly, to be honest. I have like mixed feelings about that prison. And in any way, regardless what you have seen on my video, you gotta educate yourself, have your own sources, do your due diligence and make your own opinion. Like my video has nobody paid me to make this video, so I'm not trying to influence anyone's opinion that communism was bad or good or anything like that. Certainly communism is a forever part of the Romanian history, that's certain, with its good and bad things. But yeah, what I would advise is, do your own diligence, because history, remember this is a true fact. History is never written by the losers. History is written by the winner, and it is so important for the winner to write a nice history that will allow him to continue to rule further. So whatever you saw in that museum, say to yourself that it was written and I would say put together after the collapse of the communist regime. So anyway, this was a beautiful day in the city of Sighetu. It was a little bit rainy, but now the sky is getting better and people are getting out because it's the end of the day. It's a Sunday, tomorrow holidays, it's summer, in the middle of August. I love being here in Romania, exploring the different regions.
Two kids, two runaways, lost in the backbeat of a heartbreak. What does it matter anyway if we want to leave behind all our mistakes? Oh, your eyes, they tell the truth. Oh, the line from me to you, we know it's tangled up.
Wow, look at the location of this village in the heart of Maramures mountains. And actually the place where we are going, where there is the train, that steam train, is called Mocanica. But as I said, now it's a little bit late. Tomorrow morning, promised we'll see that. We enter the village of Barsana. This is where there is the monastery of Barsana, this important religious monument that kept the Orthodox Christianity together in this region of Romania for centuries, actually, despite the external forces. I made a video about it that will pop up here. Yesterday I could already see the monastery from here, from these beautiful fields. It is actually the village of Barsana. It's really beautiful. You see a lot of foreign cars actually, from France, from the UK, probably Romanians coming back here for vacation, you know, who bought a land, built a house. It's so beautiful and peaceful. I had to stop here because there is a landscape, I swear, out of a fairy tale. God, look at this. Wow. Impossibly beautiful. God, this village is insanely beautiful. There is actually, I think this is a guest house called Casa Busta. Wow. See, these are the views that you experience here in Romania. And actually the river here is called Iza. This one, fortunately the level of water is not that high, for obvious reason, because 2022 is one of the hottest summers. But look at the views right there. Wow. Some peaceful settlements here. You see a couple houses. You hear the cogs, chicken. Wow, I don't know about you guys, but yeah, I think I'm gonna buy a plot of land here, build a house and retire. Life is simple here. Where is all the stress of the big cities and the big countries, the imperialistic countries, afraid of Russia and China and America and whatever other bullshit thing that they filled our heads with it? Life is so simple here, look. Alright, let's keep going to our destination, Borsa, where I have a guest house waiting for me and a dinner actually. Because yes, I'm a bit hungry. I just found the Tesla coil in Romania. Let me show you. The Romanian Tesla coil. Here it is.